Bruce McConnell here with Locomotive Systems Training. We're still in the FRA locomotive inspection mode, but we're changing things a little bit today. Let's take a look. We're going to talk about Federal Railroad Administration. Again, that's what FRA stands for. Remember, it's part of a federal government agency. We're going to talk about penalties. They're there for a specific reason, which we'll get into in a little bit. But there are penalties that deal with all the parts that we have or will talk about. Part 223, safety glazing standards. And again, glazing is another term for glass or windows. Okay, there's specific standards that the windows have to fall under. So, and if they don't, then there's penalties that occur or accrue for that. Part 224, reflectorization of rail freight. Again, that applies to locomotives. It also applies to cars, freight cars, flat cars, tank cars, gondola cars, you name it, they have to have it. A new and improved reflectorization is much, much brighter to see. So that's a section on that. Part 229, locomotive safety standards. That's a huge section of the Code of Federal Regulations that we're going to talk about. Part 231, safety appliance standards. Again, there's penalties involved in that if the locomotive is non-compliant. Okay, and Rule 230 or Part 232, brake system safety standards. So every one of these that I'm talking about has penalties associated to that locomotive if that locomotive is non-compliant. Remember, compliant means that the locomotive it's defect-free and meets all the requirements of the FRA. So we're going to talk about that. And by the way, this is LSTV-027s. So without any further ado, let's go to the next slide, penalties. Now, in each section that I just mentioned, in Part 223, Part 224, Part 229, Part 231, and Part 232, each section of these of the Code of Federal Regulations has this information listed. It varies a little bit from part to part, or what I would call chapter to chapter, but the essence and the dollar figures is still the same. So I want to kind of put a generalization on it, but every part covers penalties. So let's take a look at it. It says here, any person, including but not limited to a railroad, any manager, supervisor, official, or other employee and agent of a railroad, any owner, manufacturer, lessor, or lessee of railroad equipment, tracker facilities, any employee of such owner, manufacturer, lessor, lessee, or independent contractor who violates any requirement of this part or causes the violation of any such requirement is subject to a civil penalty of at least $650, but not more than $25,000 per violation, except that penalties may be assessed against an individual only for willful violations and for a grossly negligent violation or a pattern of repeated violation has created an imminent hazard of death or injury to persons or has caused death or injury. A penalty not to exceed $105,000 per violation may be assessed. And here's something that'll really rock your world. Each day a violation continues shall constitute a separate offense. So let's go back up here a little bit. Let's say we had a condition of that locomotive where when you look at the penalties, the schedule of penalties, it was a $650 a penalty. And let's say that locomotive was in that condition for 10 days. Well, the penalty wouldn't be $650. It would be $650 times 10, or in this case, $6,500. So as you can see, the FRA really puts the importance on making sure that a locomotive is compliant. Follow the rules, not any harm. If you have, or if you're a person that, and again, what we're looking for here is a willful violation, which we're going to talk about more, or again, and it bears repeating, or grossly negligent violation, or a pattern of repeated violations has created an imminent hazard of death or injury to persons, or has actually caused a death or injury, a penalty not to exceed $105,000 per violation may be assessed. So if I have 2 days this locomotive in violation, that's $210,000. So there's a whole lot of bite here with these penalties. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead and move on. Now, for example, let's take Part 223, Appendix B, Schedule of Civil Penalties. Again, it's built. This chart is divided into 3 areas: section, the violation, what's wrong with the locomotive, and if it's a willful violation. Well, section, that just refers to the rule or law that this area, this is glazing, obviously, but it deals with the requirements of the law. So let's say that the locomotive had, say, let me see. How about on existing locomotives, I had a defect with the windshield. Okay, and if it's a violation, that would be $2,500 per incident per day. But if it was a willful violation, and what a willful violation would be that I looked at the locomotive, I knew that it was bad, didn't report it, or any action wasn't taken, and now, so instead of it being a $2,500 violation per day, it is now a $5,000 penalty per day. So willful violation really has a whole lot of horsepower, if you will, for a willful violation. And again, this shows all the different schedules of the civil penalties. There's a section, there's a violation if it's not in compliance, and there it is if it's a willful violation. The railroad knew about it, didn't report it, or even reported, didn't fix it, or whatever, bang, there you go. Now, let's just take just a quick look. 223.9, new or rebuilt equipment, okay, locomotives, cabooses, passenger cars, existing locomotives, repairable window, existing cabooses. Well, what's a caboose? Those things haven't been around for a long time. But again, if it was on the railroad, it would have to comply. Repair of the window, existing passenger cars, okay, a repairable window, identification of units, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, they run anywhere between $1,000 and $2,500 for a violation. Over here, they run from about $2,000 all the way up to $5,000 for a willful violation. All right. So again, you better know what you're doing, and you want to make sure the work you do is correct. Okay. Let's go to the next one. All right, Part 224A, Appendix A, Schedule of Civil Penalties. This is reflectorization. That's that reflectorized yellow tape that you'll find on the side of locomotives, usually along the running boards in the front, the back, so on and so forth. There's a requirement to replace, I think it's the red reflectorized tape, because the yellow is much brighter. Again, same thing here. You have the section, you have the violation, and then you have the willful violation section. Let's take a look. Characteristics of retroflective sheeting. Reflective sheeting applied does not meet the requirements. It tells you right in that rule of what the minimum requirements are that has to have. If that doesn't have it, well, there's your fine, $25,000 or $2,500 for a violation. And if you knew about it and didn't do nothing with it, now it just bumped up to $5,000. And again, that's per incident per day, because each day is a new violation or a new offense. Okay. And then we talk about sheeting dimensions and quality, failure to apply minimum amount of retroflective sheeting in accordance with Table 2. Tells you how much and where it's got to be. Again, if that isn't done correctly, there's a $2,500 fine, and then if it's willful, $5,000 fine. Okay? Applying retroflective sheeting in the wrong dimensions. It has to be of a specific width, a specific length, a specific height, and a specific location. So if that's not done right, there we go, $2,500 fine per incident per day for a violation, and $5,000 for a willful violation. Location, which is what I just mentioned, of a retroreflective sheeting, applying retroreflective sheeting in a non-conforming pattern. They even tell you how the pattern of putting that reflective tape on there is. $2,000 for a violation. Look here, $4,000 per incident per day for a willful violation. Implementation schedule. Failure to apply retroreflective sheeting to new freight car or locomotive before equipment is placed in service. Look at this. Bumps up to $5,000 a day per violation for a violation. $7,500 per incident per day for a willful violation. Failure to apply retroreflective sheeting to existing freight car or locomotive in accordance with the minimum schedules in the paragraphs we've shown here. $5,000 for a violation, $7,500 for a willful violation. So, as you can see, there is some horsepower, there is some bite in these rules. Okay, let's go to the next one. 229. Now, what we did here, I want to show you this. This is a huge portion of the Code of Federal Regulations. And I want you to see this. Part 229, Appendix B. That's right, there's Appendix A and Appendix B and Appendix C and so on and so forth. Schedule of civil penalties, Subpart C, and that's what I meant to say. So there's Subpart A, Subpart B, Subpart C. State requirements, and I want you to know this. It just says small portion. We don't have time to go into all of them, so I just had a small section here taken out just to give you an idea of what they're talking about. Sections again, violations, willful violations. Protection against personal injury, $2,500 for a violation, $5,000 for a willful violation. Exhaust and battery gases, okay? We don't want our crew breathing those fumes. And again, if the condition existed and it was a 10-day that thing was in violation of, that's not a $25,000 fine. So, but for right now, per incident per day, $2,500, and for a willful, it's $5,000. General condition to be assessed based on relevant facts, $1,000 to $5,000, and then $2,000 to $7,500 per incident per day for a willful violation. Brakes in general, $2,500 for a violation, $5,000 for a willful violation. I'm going to go down here a little bit further. Main reservoir safety valve, $2,500. Willful violation, $5,000. A lot of money there. Pneumatically actuated control reservoir, what they call control air, $2,500 for a violation, and $5,000 for a willful violation. Aluminum main reservoir tanks, most railroads don't run them anymore. Most. I'm sure there's some out there, but most of them don't. But if they did, and they didn't follow the regulations, $2,500 for a violation and $5,000 for a willful violation. Brake gauges. The brake gauges have to be legible, they have to be functional, they have to be readable, okay? They have to be legible. $2,500 for a violation, $5,000 for a willful violation. Piston travel. Piston travel is very critical on a locomotive. The piston travel is too short, the brakes won't work right. If the piston travel is too long, the brakes won't work right. What we're looking for is that happy spot right there. Not too short, not too long. We want the brakes just right. Okay? But if the brakes are out of code, which is 1.5 inches less than the total possible piston of the travel, $2,500 fine per incident per day, $5,000 if it's a willful violation. Foundation brake gear. We've talked about this way back in some earlier videos. Foundation brake gear, ladies and gentlemen, is all the running gear. It's the pistons, it's the cylinders, the pistons, the levers, the beams, the brake heads, the lateral restraint rods. It's all that information. Okay. Again, if there's a violation of that, $2,500 per day. If it's willful, it's $5,000. Last but not least, leakage. Okay. I'm guessing that probably equalizing reservoir leakage, or it could be main reservoir leakage. I have to look that reg up. Don't have it off the top of my head. $2,500 per violation per day, $5,000 for a willful violation. So for every regulation that's in the Code of Federal Regulations for the locomotive, there is a violation fine or penalty, and there is a willful. Remember, you don't want to be in either one of these categories. That's why I always tell everybody, whatever you do, do the work correctly, do it safely, and do it correctly. All right, let's go to the next one. 230, Part 231, Appendix A, Schedule of Civil Penalties, small part or small portion. FRA Safety Appliance Defect Code, Handbrake. Now, years and years ago, oh my God, I'm showing my age here, way back in the early 70s when I hired on or got in the railroad industry, a handbrake was an option you could buy. It wasn't required, but the FRA clearly states that if a locomotive is equipped with that component, it must operate as intended. So let's take a look at handbrakes. And now, I don't remember, I'd have to look it up. After a certain year, all locomotives that are built or rebuilt are required to have a handbrake. So Basically, all locomotives now have to have a handbrake. So a handbrake or handbrake part missing, again, look at this, $5,000 fine for a violation. Look at that, $7,500 for a willful violation. Ouch. A handbrake or handbrake part broken, $5,000, $7,500. Ouch. Handbrake or handbrake part loose or worn, $2,500 per day, $5,000 if it's a willful violation per day. Handbrake inoperative, look at that, $5,000 per incident per day. Willful is $7,500. The money jacks up pretty darn quick. Get very expensive. A handbrake ineffective, $2,500 for a violation, $5,000 for a willful. Handbrake improperly applied. I don't remember if I just did that or not, but at the sake of being rude, $2,500 and $5,000. Handbrake incorrectly located. That's interesting. Handbrake has to be in a specific area to work properly. So if it's put in the wrong spot, $2,500 fine for a violation and $5,000 willful. Handbrake shaft welded or wrong dimension, $2,500 and $5,000 for a willful violation. Let's see. Handbrake shaft not retained in operating position, $2,500, $5,000 for a willful. And handbrake or handbrake parts, wrong design, $2,500, $5,000 for willful violations. Or handbrake wheel or lever has insufficient clearance around rim or the handle for hand clearance. Okay, $2,500 for a violation and $5,000 for a willful. So as you can see, and this is just for handbrakes. The FRA is very specific, and they're obviously very serious. They want to make sure all this stuff is working correctly. Okay, subpart B, general requirements, small part. All train braking systems. Failure to meet general design requirements, $2,500, $5,000 for a willful. Failure to have proper percentage of operating brakes from a Class 1 brake test. Look at that, $5,000 for a violation, $7,500 for a willful violation. Operating with less than 85% operative brakes, those are the ones on the box cars. Yeah, for the whole train, actually, $5,000, $7,500 per incident per day. Improper use of a car with an inoperative or ineffective brakes, $2,500 per day, $5,000 for willful. Okay, improper display of piston travel. Where are we going to find piston travel dimensions on that locomotive? Well, the way you're going to find them, if you look at the blue card, and of course it depends on which railroad determines what color the card is, but the ones from the federal government is a blue card. That's why they call it the blue card. And it's stamped, or not stamped, but it's written right in there. It'll say, and I forget what section it is, but it says piston travel. And it'll be on that card. So improper, so it has to be on the blue card, and it has to have the proper dimension displayed. Otherwise, that in itself is a $2,500 fine, $5,000 for willful violation. So the inspector's job gets really, really important here, doesn't it? Okay? Failure to stop train with excessive airflow or gradient. Ooh, yeah, okay. $2,500 per incident per day, $5,000 for willful. Okay, the brakes got to work, don't they? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Securement of unattended equipment. Oh my gosh, you know, years and years, and been in the railroad business now for over 40 years, and you hear these stories from around the country and around the world where equipment was supposedly secured down. People walked away from it, and a little while later, next thing you know, it's rolling down the hill backwards or whatever. So yeah, and it does happen, unfortunately. So let's take a look at that. Securement of unattended equipment, failure to apply a sufficient number of handbrakes, failure to develop or implement procedure to verify number applied. Look at that, $5,000 per incident per day, $7,500 for a willful violation. Okay, failure to initiate emergency, $2,500 for a violation, $5,000 for a willful. Failure to apply handbrakes on locomotives, coming in at over 200 tons apiece, a lot of them. You don't want that rolling down the hill by itself, because if there's anything in the way, it's going to create quite a problem for us. Failure to apply handbrake on locomotives, $2,500 per day, $5,000 a day for willful. Failure to adopt or comply with procedures for securing unattended locomotive. Look at that. Look at that. $5,000, and again, they bumped that up because they've had issues where they've had runaway locomotives and even sometimes even runaway freight trains. So right here, if you don't secure it right, that's $5,000 per day, $7,500 for a willful violation. Okay? Improper adjustment of air regulating devices. The brakes don't work right. That's a violation. Tells you right in the FRA rules how the brakes are supposed to work. $2,500 per day, $5,000 per day if it's willful. And last but not least, failure to hold supervisors jointly responsible, $2,500 for a violation and $5,000 for a willful violation. Quite interesting, isn't it? Okay, let's go to the next one. All right. So, and again, remember, this is only a small sampling of the Code of Federal Regulations, but in every section, there is a schedule of civil penalties. And these penalties are tied directly to the regulations that are in that manual. Okay? So, the FRA is very, very serious about making sure the railroads are compliant. So, again, like with every video we've shot so far regarding FRA, I want you to go to their website, take a look at it. It's www.FRA. And that's not a dot, that says DOT.gov. Or it's www.fra.gov. Now, also we want you to visit our website, Locomotive Systems Training, and the following web address is LST-ca.com. Once again, that's LST-ca.com. Thank you and have a safe day.